The single dad saw deaf twins ignored by everyone. Then he signed hello. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. In the quiet town of Maplewood, where everyone knew everyone else's business, there was a man named Jack who led a quiet, simple life. Jack was a single father, raising his 12-year-old son alone after the loss of his wife several years ago. Despite the hardships, he always kept a positive attitude, working long hours at his mechanic shop to provide for his son and ensure that they lived a comfortable life. Jack's son, Ethan, was his world. They shared a special bond, having only each other to rely on. But deep down, Jack felt a part of him was missing. He longed for a connection, a sense of belonging, beyond just his small family. It was on an ordinary Saturday afternoon when Jack's world took an unexpected turn. He was on his way to pick Ethan up from a weekend soccer practice when he passed the local park. As he approached, he noticed something unusual. Two young children sitting alone on a bench. They were twin girls, no older than 6 or 7, and both were clearly in distress. Jack could see their tears from across the park. What caught his attention, however, was not just their distress but the fact that no one else seemed to notice. People walked by without even a glance in their direction. It was as though they were invisible. The girls were dressed in mismatched clothing, and their shoes were too big for them, clearly out of place. They were alone, and yet, the busy world around them continued as if nothing was amiss. Jack's heart sank as he parked his car and made his way over to them. As he approached, he realized something that made him stop in his tracks. The twins were deaf. He could see the way they communicated with each other using hand gestures, but they had no one to talk to. The silence around them felt deafening. Without thinking, Jack crouched down in front of the twins and gently waved to get their attention. They looked up, startled at first, but then their faces softened as they saw the kindness in his eyes. Jack smiled warmly and signed hello to them, something he had learned when he was younger but had long forgotten. He didn't know if they would understand him, but to his surprise, their eyes lit up when they saw the sign. It was a simple gesture, but it was enough to break the ice. One of the girls, the older twin by a minute, shyly waved back and signed hello in return. Jack felt a wave of emotion wash over him as he realized just how alone these children must have felt. They hadn't just been ignored by the people around them. They had been forgotten, their voices unheard. As Jack sat down on the bench beside them, he knew that he couldn't just walk away. Something deep inside him told him that he had to do more. He didn't know what, but he knew that these twins needed someone who would listen, someone who cared. And in that moment, Jack made a silent vow to help them, to give them the attention and care they deserved. Little did he know, this small act of kindness would set off a chain of events that would change his life forever. As Jack sat on the bench with the twins, the park around them seemed to fade into the background. The usual hustle and bustle of the weekend crowd, the chatter of families, and the sound of distant laughter felt distant, as if the world had become smaller for just a moment. The twins, still looking at Jack with wide, curious eyes, began to sign to each other, their hands moving in swift, graceful motions that told a story of their own. Jack watched them, his heart heavy with the realization of how many times they had probably been ignored, dismissed, and left behind by the world. He wasn't sure what had prompted him to approach them, but something inside him told him he couldn't walk away. "What are your names?" Jack asked softly, watching the girls hesitate for a moment before the older twin, who had signed hello back to him earlier, signed something in reply. Jack smiled, feeling a rush of gratitude. He could understand the signs, even if he wasn't fluent. He had learned basic sign language years ago, back when his mother had worked with the deaf community, but he hadn't kept up with it. The girl signed, "I'm Mia, and this is my sister Lily." Mia's voice was soft, her signing quick and expressive. Lily, the younger twin, looked up at Jack with shy, hesitant eyes. Jack's heart melted as he realized how isolated they must feel. "Are you two okay? Where is your family?" Jack asked, his voice gentle. The twins looked down, their expressions darkening, and they shook their heads. They didn't say anything out loud, but their silence spoke volumes. Jack knew the feeling of being abandoned all too well. He had grown up with little, and even as an adult, he felt the sting of loneliness. His wife had passed away when Ethan was just a baby, and since then, it had just been him and his son against the world. Jack's thoughts were interrupted by a faint cry from Lily. He looked down and saw that the younger twin had tears streaming down her face, her hands trembling. "Hey, it's okay," Jack said softly, his voice a soothing balm to the girl's distress. "You're not alone. I'm here now." He pulled his jacket tighter around his body and offered it to them, but they shook their heads, still hesitant. Jack frowned, realizing they had likely been let down before by people who promised help but never followed through. He could feel their fear, their distrust of the world around them. Jack stood up and said, "I'll take you both home. You shouldn't be out here like this." Mia looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and uncertainty. She nodded, but Lily clung to her sister, still hesitant. Jack reached out, gently touching her shoulder. "It's okay. I promise, I'm not going to hurt you. Let's get you two somewhere safe." The twins nodded, and with that, Jack took their small hands in his and led them toward his car. As they walked, Jack couldn't help but think about what had drawn him to them. It wasn't just the fact that they were in need. It was something deeper. He knew what it was like to feel forgotten, invisible, like no one cared. But now, he had a chance to change that for these girls. Jack's thoughts raced as he drove, wondering what their lives had been like, why they had been abandoned. But no answers came. For now, all he knew was that he had to help them. He was determined to make sure they didn't have to face this world alone. Little did he know, this was the start of a journey that would change everything for them all. As Jack drove the twins to his home, the weight of the situation started to settle on him. The sun was beginning to set, casting a soft orange glow across the streets of Maplewood. He glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the twins sitting quietly in the back seat, their small faces a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Mia, the older twin, was holding Lily's hand tightly. Jack's heart ached as he thought about what they had been through. They were so young, yet they had already experienced a level of hardship that most adults could not imagine. Jack didn't know much about their situation, but he knew one thing for sure. He had to do something. The drive felt longer than it was, the silence between them weighing heavily on him. He wished he could say something to make them feel more comfortable, but what could he say? He wasn't even sure what kind of help they needed, but he was determined to figure it out. When they arrived at his house, Jack was relieved to see his son Ethan already home from soccer practice. Ethan was waiting for him by the door, his backpack slung over one shoulder. As Jack got out of the car, he watched Ethan's eyes widen when he saw the twins in the back seat. "Who are they?" Ethan asked, his voice filled with curiosity and concern. Jack glanced at the twins, who were still sitting quietly in the back seat, not sure how to explain their presence. "They're just some kids who need a place to stay for a little while," Jack said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We're going to help them." Ethan nodded slowly, but Jack could see the concern in his eyes. He knew that Ethan was used to their little family of two, and this was going to be an adjustment for both of them. "Come on in," Jack said, offering a warm smile to the twins. Mia and Lily hesitated for a moment, looking at each other, then climbed out of the car. Jack opened the door to his modest home, and they all walked inside. The smell of fresh coffee and warm bread filled the air, a contrast to the coldness of the park they had just left behind. "This is Ethan, my son," Jack said, introducing them. "Ethan, these are Mia and Lily. They're going to stay with us for a little while." Ethan smiled at the twins, though he was still a little uncertain. "Nice to meet you," he said, his voice soft. Mia and Lily both smiled shyly, but said nothing. Jack could see the hesitation in their eyes. They were unsure of this new world they had just entered, just as he was unsure of what to do next. But one thing was clear. He wasn't going to let them go back to the street. Jack led them into the living room, where they could sit and relax. He didn't know how long they would stay, or what kind of future lay ahead for them, but he was determined to help. Over the next few hours, Jack learned more about the twins. Mia, the older twin, was quiet but strong. She had a protective streak, always looking out for Lily. Lily, on the other hand, was more reserved but had a spark of curiosity in her eyes that reminded Jack of Ethan when he was younger. As Jack sat down with them, he couldn't help but feel a sense of responsibility wash over him. He wasn't just helping these kids because they needed a place to stay. He was helping them because, in some ways, they reminded him of his own son. They were lost, just like he had been before he found his way. And now, he had the chance to help them find theirs. Jack's thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. He stood up, his heart racing slightly, unsure of who it could be. When he opened the door, he was surprised to see a social worker standing there, a woman in her mid-30s with a kind but firm expression on her face. "Mr. Harrison?" she asked. "I'm Karen from the local children's services. I received a call about 2 missing children, and I believe they might be here." Jack felt a lump form in his throat. He knew this moment was coming, but he wasn't sure how to handle it. Mia and Lily had been abandoned, and now the system was catching up with them. Jack took a deep breath and nodded. "Yes, they're here. I was just trying to help." Karen gave him a sympathetic look. "I understand, but I'll need to make sure everything is in order." Jack nodded again, his mind racing with thoughts of what might happen next. Would the twins be taken away from him? Would he be able to help them? Or would the system fail them like it had failed so many others? As Karen stepped inside, Jack knew that the road ahead would be difficult. But he also knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to give up on them. Not now, not ever. As Karen stepped into the house, Jack's heart raced. He could feel the weight of her presence, her gaze scanning the room as if she were a professional in charge of making decisions that would change the lives of the people she encountered. The twins sat silently on the couch, their hands folded in their laps, eyes wide with uncertainty. Jack motioned for Karen to take a seat. "Please, come in," he said, trying to keep his voice calm. Karen nodded, sitting down on the edge of the chair, not taking her eyes off the twins. "Mr. Harrison," she began, "I understand you're trying to help, but I need to follow procedure. These children are under the care of child services." Jack's stomach twisted. He had known this day might come, but hearing it out loud made it real. Mia and Lily were no longer just children he had taken in to give them a safe place. They were now part of the system. "I understand," Jack said softly, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "But I need you to understand something. I didn't bring them here to take advantage of the system. I just wanted to help." Karen studied him for a moment, her expression neutral. Then, she turned her gaze to Mia and Lily, who were still sitting quietly, looking at Jack with trust in their eyes. "Can you tell me about their situation?" Karen asked, her tone softer now. Jack looked at the girls. Mia's hands were tightly clasped together, and Lily had her head down, avoiding eye contact. Jack could feel their fear, their desperation to avoid being sent back to the harsh world they had known. He took a deep breath. "I found them alone at the park. No one was helping them. They were scared. They need someone to care for them." His voice cracked slightly, but he continued. "I just wanted to make sure they were safe." Karen's eyes softened. "I understand, Mr. Harrison, but we still need to follow the protocol." Jack nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I know," he said, "but I can't just turn my back on them. They're just kids. They need love and stability, not a system that treats them like a number." Karen remained quiet for a moment, her fingers tapping on the armrest of her chair. Finally, she spoke again. "I understand your concern, and I know you want to help, but this is bigger than just offering them a place to stay. We'll have to assess the situation further, but I need you to understand the reality of the situation. These kids need more than what you can provide on your own. I'll need to contact the proper authorities and see what options are available." Jack's heart sank. He felt as if the ground was slipping away from beneath him. "I can't let them go," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "I know I'm not perfect, but I'm all they have right now. I can give them a better life than they have in that system." Karen looked at him for a long moment, her face unreadable. Finally, she sighed and stood up. "I'll do my best to make sure they're taken care of," she said softly, "but I can't promise anything." Jack watched as she walked to the door, her footsteps echoing in the silent house. As she stepped outside, Jack's gaze fell on Mia and Lily. They were looking at him now, their eyes filled with fear and hope. "I'm not going to let them take you," Jack whispered, more to himself than to them. "I'm not going to let them take you." But in that moment, Jack realized something. He wasn't just fighting for the twins. He was fighting for something he hadn't realized he had been missing all along, a family. His heart was full, but it was also heavy, because he knew that the path ahead wouldn't be easy. The system was a powerful force, and as much as he wanted to protect them, he wasn't sure if he could win this battle. But one thing was clear, He wasn't going to give up on these girls. He had made a promise, and he intended to keep it, no matter what. Days passed, and the uncertainty of the situation hung over Jack like a heavy cloud. Despite Karen's reassurances, he couldn't shake the feeling that the twins might be taken away from him at any moment. Mia and Lily had settled into a quiet routine at Jack's home. They spent their days in the living room, drawing or playing quietly with Ethan, who had quickly become attached to them. Jack watched the way his son looked out for the twins, always making sure they were included in whatever he was doing. Ethan had a big heart, and Jack was proud of how he had stepped up to take care of Mia and Lily without hesitation. But despite the small moments of joy, Jack couldn't ignore the fact that the twins were still carrying a deep sadness. Mia, though she smiled occasionally, had grown distant at times, and Lily often seemed lost in thought, staring out the window as if waiting for someone. One evening, after dinner, Jack sat down with the twins in the living room. Ethan was in his room, working on his homework. Jack needed to talk to the girls, to let them know that he was still there for them, and that no matter what happened, they would always have a place with him. "Mia," Jack said gently, "how are you feeling?" Mia looked up at him, her eyes hesitant. She had been quiet all evening, her fingers twisting a piece of string she had been playing with. She opened her mouth to speak, but then hesitated. It was clear she wasn't ready to talk. Jack nodded, understanding. He reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's okay. I know this is hard," he said, "but you're safe here. You don't have to worry about anything." Mia's eyes flickered toward Lily, who was sitting on the other side of the room, gazing out the window again. Jack followed her gaze and saw the sadness in the younger twin's eyes. "What about Lily?" he asked softly. Mia's gaze turned to the floor. "She misses our mom," Mia whispered. Jack's heart broke for them. He knew they had been through so much, and he could only imagine how hard it was for them to be separated from the one person who had always been there for them. "I know it's hard to be apart from your mom," Jack said, his voice gentle but filled with sincerity. "But I want you both to know that I'm here for you. You don't have to go through this alone." Mia nodded slowly, but her eyes were still filled with pain. Jack knew they needed more than just words. They needed security, stability, and above all, love. Just as Jack was about to speak again, his phone rang. He looked at the screen and saw Karen's name. His heart skipped a beat. He had been expecting this call, but now that it was here, he wasn't sure what to say. He took a deep breath before answering. "Hello," he said. "Mr. Harrison." Karen's voice came through the phone, firm but not unkind. "I've spoken with my superiors, and we've made a decision. We need to set up a meeting with the Children's Services. It's time to discuss the next steps." Jack's stomach churned. He knew this moment was coming, but hearing it out loud made it feel all the more real. "When?" Jack asked, his voice tight. "Tomorrow at 10 a.m., Karen replied. "Please be prepared for the meeting." Jack's mind raced as he hung up the phone. Tomorrow. That was it. The twins' future was about to be decided, and there was nothing more Jack could do except wait. He walked back into the living room and found Mia and Lily sitting in the same spots, their heads bowed. He knew they could sense the tension in the air. He took a seat beside them and pulled them close. "Tomorrow, we're going to have a meeting," Jack said, his voice steady despite the knot in his stomach. "But no matter what happens, I want you both to know something." He looked at both of them, his eyes filled with determination. "You're not alone. You have a home here, with me and Ethan, and we will do everything we can to keep you safe." Mia and Lily looked up at him, their faces still somber, but with a small glimmer of hope in their eyes. Jack knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to face it, no matter the outcome. He had made a promise to these girls, and he would keep it. They had been through enough already. Now, it was time for Jack to fight for their future. As the night wore on, Jack couldn't help but wonder what would happen in the morning. But for now, all he could do was hold on to the hope that he could be the family they needed, the family they deserved. The morning of the meeting arrived with an unsettling calm. Jack had barely slept the night before, his mind racing with thoughts of what might happen. He stood in the kitchen, staring at the coffee pot as it slowly filled with the dark brew, each drop a reminder of the pressure weighing on him. He glanced over at the twins, who were sitting quietly at the table, their faces a mix of uncertainty and fear. Mia was clutching Lily's hand tightly, and Lily, as usual, had her gaze turned toward the window, lost in thought. Ethan was in his room, preparing for school, though Jack could tell he was just as nervous as he was. Jack had tried his best to reassure the twins, telling them that everything would be fine, but the truth was, he didn't know what would happen. He didn't know if the system would take them away, or if he'd be able to keep them in his care. The clock on the wall ticked away the minutes, and before Jack knew it, it was time to leave for the meeting. The tension in the house was palpable, and Jack could feel it in his chest as he helped the twins into the car. As they drove to the Children's Services office, Jack kept his eyes on the road, his mind running through every possible outcome. What would the social workers think of him? Would they believe he could provide a stable home for the twins? His grip tightened on the steering wheel as they reached the office. The building stood tall and imposing, a stark contrast to the warmth of his home. Jack took a deep breath as he parked the car. The twins stayed silent in the back seat, their hands still clasped together, both of them now looking at him with silent trust. "It'll be okay," Jack said softly, though he wasn't sure if he believed it himself. Mia gave him a small, tentative smile, and Lily, ever the quiet one, just nodded. The three of them walked into the building together, the weight of the moment settling over them. Inside, Karen was waiting for them, along with two other social workers. Karen gave Jack a nod, her expression unreadable, but Jack could sense that she was trying to be supportive. The twins sat next to him, their eyes wide as they observed the room. The social workers exchanged pleasantries before one of them, a middle-aged woman with glasses, spoke up. "Mr. Harrison," she began, "we've reviewed the case, and we understand your concern for the children. But we have to be honest with you. We can't make promises about what will happen next." Jack nodded, his stomach churning. "I understand," he said, his voice steady despite the fear rising in his chest. "But I can promise you one thing. I will do whatever it takes to keep them safe. They belong with me." The social workers exchanged looks, and for a moment, Jack wasn't sure what they were thinking. He felt as though they were sizing him up, judging whether he was truly capable of providing a stable environment for Mia and Lily. Karen spoke up next, her voice calm but firm. "Mr. Harrison, we've seen the way you've cared for these children. You've opened your home to them, and for that, I commend you. But we also have to consider their long-term future. This isn't about what's best for just one day or 1 month. This is about ensuring they have the resources and support they need to thrive." Jack's heart sank as he realized what she was implying. The twins needed more than just a roof over their heads. They needed therapy, support from a community, a place where they could grow and heal. "I can provide that," Jack said, his voice growing more confident. "I may not have all the resources in the world, but I have love and dedication. That's what they need, and I can give them that." The social worker who had been quiet until now spoke up. "Mr. Harrison, we understand your commitment, but the decision isn't just yours to make. We'll need to place the children in a program that can offer more support before making a final." Determination. Jack's heart pounded. He could feel the walls closing in on him. Mia and Lily were looking at him now, their eyes filled with hope and fear. Jack didn't know what would happen next, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to give up on them. Not now, not ever. He looked at the social workers and spoke with a calm determination. "I understand. But know this, these girls are not just a case to me. They are my family now. I will fight for them, and I will do whatever it takes to make sure they are safe and loved. Please don't take them from me." The room fell silent for a moment, and Jack held his breath, waiting for their response. Finally, the social worker who had been quiet nodded. "We'll take that into consideration," she said, her voice softer now. "But we can't make any decisions today." Jack nodded, his heart still racing. He knew the fight wasn't over. But in that moment, he had made one thing clear. He would fight for Mia and Lily with everything he had. Days went by after the meeting, and the uncertainty still loomed over Jack's head like a thick cloud. The social workers had left him with little to hold on to. He couldn't shake the feeling that they didn't believe in him, that they saw him as nothing more than a man trying to hold on to something he wasn't meant to have. Jack spent his days trying to keep things normal for Mia and Lily. He focused on giving them structure, routines that would help them feel secure. Ethan, though still adjusting to having the twins around, began to bond with them more. He would invite Mia and Lily to play video games with him, and they'd laugh together, filling the house with the sound of innocent joy. For a few moments, Jack could almost forget the pressure, the looming decisions. But as the days passed, Jack could sense the change in Mia and Lily. Mia, in particular, was becoming more withdrawn. She would often sit by the window, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, staring out at the world as if waiting for something to change. Lily, who had always been quieter, began to mirror her sister's distance. Jack couldn't help but feel like he was failing them. Despite all his efforts, the twins seemed like they were waiting for something, and Jack had no idea what that was. One evening, after dinner, Jack sat down with them on the couch. Ethan was in his room again, doing his homework, and the house was quiet, the only sound being the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Jack looked over at the twins, their faces still a mix of uncertainty and quiet hope. "Mia," Jack said softly, trying to break the silence. "Is everything okay?" Mia turned her head slowly, her eyes meeting his, but she didn't answer. Instead, she looked away, as if searching for something out the window. Jack's heart sank. He had tried so hard to help them, to make them feel safe, but it seemed like it wasn't enough. Lily, sitting next to Mia, nudged her sister gently and whispered something in her ear. Jack didn't hear it, but Mia nodded and then turned back to Jack. "We miss our mom," Mia said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. The words hit Jack like a punch to the gut. He had suspected it, but hearing it out loud made it real. The twins had lost everything, not just their home, but the one person who had always been there for them. Jack swallowed hard, trying to keep his voice steady. "I know," he said softly. "I know it's hard. I can't replace your mom, but I promise you I'm here for you. I'll always be here." Mia looked up at him, her eyes filled with tears, and for the first time in a long while, Jack saw the depth of her pain. She didn't speak, but Jack could see the trust in her eyes. She wanted to believe him. Jack reached out and gently pulled her into a hug, feeling her small body tremble in his arms. Lily, who had been sitting quietly, leaned in and hugged him too. Jack's heart swelled as he held them both. They weren't just his responsibility, they were his family. Jack didn't know what the future held. He didn't know if the social workers would come and take them away, or if he would be able to keep his promise. But in that moment, holding the twins in his arms, he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to give up on them. He had promised to keep them safe, and he would fight for them, no matter what. The next morning, Jack woke up early, his mind heavy with thoughts of the meeting with the social workers. He had tried to reassure Mia and Lily the night before, but he knew the real test was coming. He glanced at the clock, 10 a.m. The time had come. The twins were still asleep in their room, their breathing soft and even. Jack got up quietly, his heart pounding. He needed to get ready for the meeting, but more than that, he needed to make sure he had the strength to fight for them. As he dressed, he thought about the promises he had made, about the love he had for these girls who had come into his life and changed it forever. He wasn't going to let anyone take them away. They were his now, and he would protect them at all costs. When the twins finally woke up, Jack gave them each a quick hug before they left for the meeting. "It's going to be okay," he said, trying to sound confident even though his nerves were racing. He knew he couldn't control what would happen next, but he was ready to fight for them, no matter what. The day of the meeting had arrived, and Jack felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. He had promised Mia and Lily that everything would be okay, but as the time for the meeting drew closer, he began to wonder if he was truly capable of keeping that promise. The twins had grown quiet again, their faces filled with an emotion Jack couldn't quite place. He had tried to distract them by taking them to the park that morning, but their minds were clearly elsewhere. As they walked through the park, Jack could feel their distance, the invisible wall they had put up to protect themselves. Mia's eyes were cast down, and Lily's small hand was tightly gripping his. He could see how much they wanted to trust him, but he knew they had been hurt before. He couldn't blame them for being cautious. It was hard for Jack, too. He had never imagined himself in a position where he had to fight so hard for something he loved, but here he was. His life had always been about surviving, about keeping his head above water for himself and Ethan. But now it was different. These girls needed him, and he wasn't going to let them down. The drive to the Children's Services office felt longer than it really was. Jack tried to keep his focus on the road, but his mind kept drifting back to the twins. What would happen if they were taken from him? Would he ever see them again? Would they ever feel safe? As he pulled into the parking lot, Jack noticed the tension in the air. The building seemed larger today, its cold, sterile walls making him feel small, insignificant. The twins were still silent in the back seat. Jack took a deep breath and turned to them. "It's going to be okay," he said, though he wasn't entirely sure he believed it. Mia gave him a small, uncertain smile, and Lily's grip on his hand tightened. He reached back and gave them both a reassuring squeeze before they got out of the car. The building was busy, but Jack felt like it was all moving in slow motion as he led Mia and Lily inside. The social workers were already waiting for them, sitting around a large table. Jack's heart began to race as they made their way to their seats. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He wasn't sure what they wanted to hear, but he was determined to speak the truth. "Mr. Harrison," the social worker at the head of the table began, "thank you for coming in today. We've reviewed the case and have considered your request to keep the children in your care." Jack nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. "I've made a promise to these girls," Jack said, his voice steady despite the tension building inside him. "I'm not asking for any special treatment. I just want to make sure they have a safe place to call home. I want to give them a chance at a better life." The social workers exchanged looks, but Jack didn't look away. He had come this far, and he wasn't going to back down. "We understand your commitment to the children, Mr. Harrison," the social worker continued. "But there are protocols we must follow. We can't make a decision based solely on your feelings." Jack swallowed hard, but he wasn't deterred. "I'm not asking for a decision based on feelings," he said. "I'm asking you to see the reality of the situation. These girls have been through enough. They don't need to be bounced around from one place to another. They need stability, they need love, and they need someone who will fight for them. I'm that person." The room fell silent for a moment. Jack could feel the weight of the social worker's gaze on him, but he refused to break his focus. Finally, the social worker who had been silent up until that point spoke. "We'll take your words into consideration, Mr. Harrison," she said. "But I must tell you, this is not an easy decision. The system is complicated, and we must ensure the safety and well-being of the children." Jack nodded, trying to remain calm. He had expected this, but hearing it still stung. He turned to Mia and Lily, who were sitting next to him, their eyes fixed on the floor. They were scared, just like he was. But he couldn't let them see his fear. He had to be strong for them. "I know this is hard for you both," Jack said, speaking softly to the twins. "But I want you to know that no matter what happens today, I'm not going anywhere. You're not alone. You're my family now." Mia looked up at him, her eyes filled with emotion, and Lily's small hand found his again. In that moment, Jack knew that whatever happened next, he had already won. He had made them feel safe, at least for now. The social workers had made no promises, but Jack had given the twins something more important than that. He had given them hope, and that was all that mattered. Days passed after the tense meeting with the social workers, and Jack could feel a shift in the air. The uncertainty that had once consumed him began to lessen, replaced by a quiet optimism. The twins, though still carrying the weight of their past, had slowly started to open up more. Mia and Lily were laughing again, playing games with Ethan, and for the first time since they had arrived, Jack could see a glimpse of the happiness that had once been theirs. It wasn't perfect, and they still had a long way to go, but it was progress. Jack had spent countless hours on the phone with therapists, support groups, and social services, working tirelessly to ensure the twins would have everything they needed to heal. Every night, before bed, he would sit with them and talk about their day. Slowly, the trust they had in him grew. Mia, once so distant, now spoke more freely, sharing stories about her mother, about their life before everything changed. Lily, though quieter, would occasionally curl up next to him on the couch, her small hand in his, seeking comfort and reassurance. It was in those moments that Jack realized how far they had come. The system may have been slow and filled with bureaucracy, but in their little home, they had built something that was worth more than anything the world could offer. One evening, after dinner, Jack sat with the twins in the living room. The warmth of the fire crackling in the fireplace filled the room with a sense of peace. Ethan had gone to bed early, exhausted from a long day at school. Jack looked over at Mia and Lily, who were sitting on the couch, their heads resting against the pillows. He smiled softly. "I'm proud of you both," he said, his voice filled with genuine affection. Mia turned her head to look at him, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "We're proud of you too," she said quietly. Jack's heart swelled with emotion. He had never imagined his life turning out like this. He had always been a man of few words, focused on surviving, on getting through each day. But with Mia and Lily, everything had changed. They had reminded him of what it meant to truly care for someone, to put their needs above your own. As Jack looked at the twins, he knew they had become his family in every sense of the word. It wasn't just about protecting them from the world. It was about helping them find their place in it, teaching them to trust again, to dream again. The next day, Jack received a call from the social workers. They had made their decision. They had reviewed everything, from his home environment to his ability to provide for the twins. And in the end, they had agreed to allow Mia and Lily to stay with him permanently. Jack couldn't believe it. The relief that washed over him was overwhelming. He had won the fight, not just for the twins, but for the family they had become. That evening, as he sat down to dinner with the twins, he could see the change in them. They were no longer the scared, withdrawn children who had walked into his home all those months ago. They were now children who knew love, who had a future full of possibilities. As they ate, Jack felt a weight lift from his shoulders. They were safe. They were home. Mia looked at him, her eyes shining with something he hadn't seen before, hope. "Do you think Mom would be proud of us?" she asked softly. Jack smiled, his heart full. "I think she would be very proud of the two of you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Mia and Lily smiled, and Jack knew, without a doubt, that they were where they were meant to be. The journey had been difficult, but it had been worth it. They had found each other, and together, they would build a future filled with love, trust, and endless possibilities. Jack had kept his promise to them, and in doing so, he had found something he hadn't realized he was missing, a family of his own. In this heartwarming tale, a single dad's journey of love and sacrifice unfolds as he fights for the safety and future of two deaf twins who have been abandoned by everyone they knew. The story explores themes of family, trust, and the power of a promise. Through the trials and tribulations of their lives, the twins find hope in the unexpected act of kindness from a man who becomes their protector. As the family faces challenges and struggles to stay together, the bond they form will touch your heart. This millionaire story is not about wealth or riches, but about the priceless value of love and family. It's a journey that reminds us that sometimes the greatest rewards come from the smallest acts of kindness. As the story progresses, Jack proves that what truly matters is not how much money you have, but the people you love and protect. In this emotional millionaire story, the twists and turns show that even in the hardest of times, family can be the greatest treasure. As the story concludes, the twins, once lost and abandoned, find the safety and love they've longed for, all thanks to the kindness of one man who never gave up on them. This is a powerful tale of hope, healing, and the enduring spirit of family, one that exemplifies the true meaning of millionaire stories that transcend wealth and materialism. This journey is a testament to the strength of love and the importance of giving, making it one of the most touching millionaire stories you'll ever hear.